For anyone currently or in the future watching, welcome. I'm going to be doing some 3D modeling today. As always, open to any questions. Anyone who is a beginner, feel free to ask me questions in the chat and I'll do what I can to answer it. I do have some background history as an educator. Yeah, feel free to comment and subscribe. so currently one of my goals is I need to make some more details for this crossbow, get some more detailed work on this thing. But I also need to work on some additional variations of this in the form of a handheld pistol style crossbow and then a very, very large rifle style crossbow, which is going to be a bit of a challenge because you always want to work from reference, and a pistol style crossbow should fit the hand form factor of a pistol, ironically enough. So that typically means that you'd want to either grab some 2D reference, or better yet, you would grab some 3D reference, which I am probably going to do the second option. Probably going to go into Unreal Engine and grab a 3D model that I can use just for the basic size and proportions of the handle, and use that for a reference for the model. Alright, so if I remember correctly, I have... Here we go. I bought a nice asset pack for some various modern rifles and pistols and modern weapons. I can use those as proportion reference. I won't use any of the original models, obviously, because they're not mine. But I can use them to get a good idea of what other creators are using in terms of the proportions and sizes. And that is what we're going to do. That way we get a better idea of kind of what looks like OBS decided to freak out there for a minute. Make sure that I'm still streaming here. Interesting. So anyway, what I was saying was I've got this really excellent modern firearms pack, and we're going to use that as some reference for building. That's really weird. My microphone is being a little funky. Hello? Can you guys hear me correctly? There we go. Let's try that. All right. Yeah, this could definitely crash the stream, but here's hoping that it doesn't. Okay, so I'm back now. Sorry about that, guys. So basically what I just did is I jumped into Unreal Engine and I grabbed some assets from the marketplace. So basically it's my personal belief that you know, using reference, like other people's meshes as reference material for like sizing and proportions is fine, but like you should never use their original stuff. Like you shouldn't grab their 3D models or textures or materials and claim it as your own. That's not cool. But grabbing a mesh and importing it into a scene to get the idea of like how it's built or its proportions, things like that, that's different. That's really no different than in my opinion, that's no different than grabbing, you know, reference images from online and making sure that you match, you know, your 3D model to a reference image. You know, pretty much the same thing in that case. This, in my opinion, is just a very sophisticated point of reference. All right. Got that. Interesting. Ooh, that's not good. Not sure what's going on there. Oh, okay. That's better. All right, so there's one of the shotguns, and then we're going to import the other one. Oh, that's weird. Okay, so I think what's going on there is that both of these guns are sharing the same bone structure, and so it just didn't import two separate skeletons. Okay, so as you can see, this is a pretty basic shotgun model, which suits our needs just fine. Because our goal is to basically compare these. That. Okay, so my goal here is we're going to use this realistically proportioned shotgun model and compare it to our crossbow that we got going on here. Now, that being said, obviously there are big differences between a shotgun as a modern firearm and a big bulky crossbow from ye olden times. So that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. But the main thing that we're looking for is the trigger placement to handle grip to the butt of the stock and the proportions that it is using. And then also getting an idea of where we could realistically place the pump action of the crossbow compared to the size of the shotgun. So we are going to place it about so, and then we're going to start making adjustments to the crossbow to more closely, not completely match the proportions, but more closely resemble a realistic set of proportions. And just to make sure this is what we want to do, we're going to do a quick comparison to the mannequin. And the other thing to keep in mind is that we are going for a more slightly stylized version of weapons. They're not meant to be super realistic. And so as such, this crossbow can be disproportionate a little bit. Doesn't need to be 100% on point. Okay, so apparently the Epic Games launcher was in the way of that entire explanation, so my bad. So this is what I was talking about. We've got our modern day standard hunting shotgun, and then we've got our stylized medieval mechanical crossbow, and we're going to try to somewhat match the proportions between the two models to make sure they fit our human proportions of our character. Now, the good thing that I can see right off the bat here the first thing is that we can actually probably afford to slide our pump handle, the pump action, forward a bit. And that will actually give us a longer draw on the action for the weapon. I think we've got that. Yep, we want this to world. There we go. Not sure why it was defaulting to component movement, but no big deal. All right, cool. That means in turn, we can actually grab this and bring this forward a bit and do the same for this. That's weird. I seem to have lost a piece somewhere along. Oh, never mind. Whoops. There we go. All right, cool. Not sure how I feel about this. So basically what we've got when the crossbow is shorter, because we're essentially extending this to be a bit longer. When it was on the shorter side, we matched the groove of the arrow channel to the bolt tip a little bit. Give a little more detail there. But that groove channel no longer matches because the clip body, or the body that supports the clip, needs to match the length of the draw for the action. So this no longer matches. I can just add more edge loops and extend this channel in the same way, which I'll probably end up doing. It's just, more polygons when I didn't need them beforehand, which is unfortunate. All right, so what we'll do is we'll combine these together temporarily. That way I can tell where the grooves are in the mesh. Go ahead and insert some edge loops here. Now, typically, if I was worried about, polygon count, I could combine these meshes together and then delete the meshes that are the faces that are butt up against each other right here. But I'm not doing that because this is meant to be a bare bones basic skeleton of the final product. And the reason for that is that basically the idea here is that I'm going to build a crossbow and build the bare bone guts of the mechanics of the crossbow. And then I can slap other designs and decorations on top of and around the crossbow for other versions of this, like basically skins, and making new versions of it. But the reason why this is important is because to save time and energy, I'm not going to want to re-rig and reanimate the crossbow for every little artistic variation that I want to make. I want to make, one basic thing that I can keep reusing and adding on top of, rather than having to rebuild the foundation, because that's just wasted time and effort. If your hero character is like their primary weapon is a crossbow, then sure, you can put a lot more time and effort and budget into making that one weapon type really detailed and extravagant and extensive. But if this is going to be a generic weapon that's going to be in the hands of generic guard number 10, it's better to build a more modular system at the beginning, so that you can build on top of something and not, you can still invest some production time to make variations, but still working from the same basic design, because you just save yourself so much more time and effort in the long run. So that is kind of what we are going to go for here. I thought I had a decent handle on the proportions for the stock of this thing, but according to this modern weapon, I did not even get close. Or, as Donkey likes to say, not even close, baby. All right. And as you can see, we're just going to kind of continue to make some adjustments here to the silhouette of this rifle stock, which is becoming the silhouette for our crossbow. All right, so here's where things get a little tricky. So we are trying to match the proportions of the shotgun stock because where a person's hand goes is along this curve, and then obviously the index finger fits here at the trigger. And so we want to kind of sort of match that a little bit while still maintaining the look and feel of our fantasy crossbow, which is going to be a little tricky. Now, I know that my edge loops are currently a mess at the moment. Not really worrying about that right now. The main thing is to make the big silhouette adjustments first to match the concept and the design, and then you can work on kind of fixing your edge loops to be more consistent geometry. And you do want to fix your edge loops, obviously, because first this looks just messy and garbagey. But more than that, the other thing that it does is that it makes it a lot harder to UV map and texture when your polygons are all funky sizes and shapes, which isn't so good. It could be a real pain to deal with later. I mean, even if you're working on a team, you should assume that, they're either going to make you fix it because you're making things too hard on your person doing the texture painting, or, as more is the common these days, is more likely you are going to have to deal with your crappy polygon layouts as someone who's probably going to have to texture paint and material your own 3D models, which is especially the case in medium to small size studios. All right, grab our edge loop there, and there we go. That's better. And now we can actually go in and fix our edge loops and polygon size. And this is why it's so important when you're working in this kind of rough block out stage of your models that you try really hard to keep your polygon count as low as possible in order to achieve your desired silhouette and proportions. And otherwise, you, like, if I would have, smoothed this mesh and, subdivided it, I would have had twice as many edge loops and vertex points to try to resize and readjust. And I can tell you from experience that is just a giant waste of time. So a good rule to kind of follow is, always work at the lowest polygon count possible and only increase your polygon count when you're ready to, take the model into another program like Zbrush, or, you're ready to start subdividing and sculpting for more detail. Because doing it early is just not worth it. All right. Well, there we go. Now we have a crossbow that much more closely resembles the proportions of a realistic shotgun model. And it's not going to be perfect or one for one. We're not going for realism here, but we do want to respect the proportions of the Unreal Mannequin to make sure that the majority of character models and character rigs that are going to be used in the engine that match the Unreal Mannequin standards will be able to be held in their hands and used. So we have good reason to at least make some effort to make the proportions somewhat standardized. All right, let's see where that puts us. Okay. Not bad. Looks like we got some weird proportions going on, though. So when we get ourselves in situations like this where we've clearly accidentally grabbed an extra vertice somewhere along the line, which has now created an asymmetric version of our 3D model, we can basically just split this sucker down the middle. Make sure that the dividing line is in fact centered. And scaled toward the middle so that this line is actually in line with the world plane instead of the model itself. And then we can just delete that, grab this, and do a quick mirror operation on it. And there we go. And to make sure all our vertices are good, we'll just grab the merge, and that should put us in a good spot. Nope. Apparently not. Apparently we've got rogue vertices down the middle. Just do another merge. How was that? There we go. There it is. Okay, cool. So we have introduced another edge loop to the model, but that is a cost I'm willing to accept because that ensures that our 3D model is in fact symmetrical on both sides of the axis, which is very important when you go to sculpt additional details. You'll use probably symmetry sculpting, and you do not want your model to not be symmetrical in your sculpting programs because that will cause all kinds of problems. So better to just deal with that here and now so we don't have to worry about it later. Oh, there we go. Okay. So again, to kind of reiterate, what we've done here is we have used a market asset as a set of proportions for, a realistic firearm while building our stylized fantasy asset. But we have not used anything from this model at all. This is simply going to be a nice set of reference to make sure our proportions and sizing of our model is on point. And that's it. Alrighty, so I believe the basic block out for this is almost done. I did want to go in here and try to add at least a few more pieces of mechanical gears and mechanisms to make this design feel a little bit more realistic, just in the sense that we want to give anyone who picks this up and sees the animations on it or sees the design, we want them to kind of feel like the pump action handle actually does something. That it actually is somehow mechanically responsible for the crossbow string, being drawn back into place before the crossbow is fired again. And to accomplish that, basically what we're going to do is we're going to build a quasi rail system with hooks that would connect to a set of gears that would turn whenever the handle is pulled back. So it's not completely realistic. The amount, like the gearing ratios and the amount of pressure you'd have to place, like the pounds of pressure a human arm would have to place on a crossbow to actually work, or how you'd have to lower, the poundage of the crossbow arms once they're drawn. That's completely and utterly unrealistic. That would absolutely never work. But in a fantasy world, it's fun to imagine that someone could carry around a crossbow and pump it like a shotgun and shoot it like a lever action rifle, basically. Totally unrealistic, but it's a fun fantasy concept. So that's kind of what we're going for here. So first things first that we're going to want is we're going to want to create the hooks that catch the string and move the crossbow string. So we're going to start there. And I'm going to start with one of our basic cylinders here for the basic size and proportions. And the draw, I have to narrow this, I think. We want the... All right, so okay, so the main thing here is that we need there to be 2 hooks, one on each side of the string. And they are essentially going to move from a position basically where the string becomes latched in place. And then they're going to slide forward as the bowstring is shot. And then it's going to come to rest where the bowstring is then in its fired neutral position, which would be about here. So we need to build a set of rails that then accommodate these hooks. But first we need to actually turn these into hooks. So let's make sure that they're in the right, that they're matched correctly. Okay. I believe that ought to put us right where we need to be. Combine these for now so that we can go in here. Now we could go perfectly vertical, but I prefer something more like this. Right, and then we can get edge loop on each of these. Go. And then that way, grab these here. There we go. Alrighty. Alrighty then. Get a side view of this. Now, typically in realistic, terms, you would have the rail hooks match the curve of your stop, your trigger stop. But we don't really care about that. It just needs to be close enough. So we're gonna just say it's good enough here. Now, we do need to fill these holes. Now, I could extrude it and merge it, but I'm just going to use the fill hole button. If I can find it. There it is, fill hole. Thankfully, Maya is pretty good if you've got 4 edges. It's pretty good at filling simple holes. Not so good at filling complex ones, but for quad that just need filled in real quick, it's a useful tool. It's kind of one of those specialty tools that you don't really need, because at the end of the day, like, you can do it manually. You just grab an edge, hold shift, and extrude, right? And then you just grab your vertices here and snap them to the end vertice. And then grab those two vertices in a selection box and just merge to center. And now you've filled the hole manually. It does the same thing. Obviously, the fill hole button is just a shortcut and just a faster operation for doing the same thing manually. So, and that's true for like the vast majority of operations in Maya. You'll find that most of them have some type of specialty tool to do it quickly. But if you know the basics of edge loops, extruding, and merging vertices, you can do 99% of 3D modeling that way. And you don't need anything more complicated than that. So, yeah, that's just it's just been my experience in the matter. And what I'm doing here is I'm just doing some basic color blocking. Makes it a bit easier to visualize what the final product is going to be. And just makes it a bit easier to tell what details I have on the model. Nothing too crazy. Okay. No, that's not what I wanted. There we go. Let's do... There we go. And I find just working with a quick 3-tone palette, well, 3 or 4 tone, just makes things a bit easier to deal with. helps you keep everything separated and easy to work with. Okay. So what we've got basically is got position 1, and I really need to create a backstop that basically feels like this is going to slot into an end rest here. So let's grab a cube and block out what that might look like. Now, to be fair, I am indulging in some on-the-fly design work. That is not recommended at all. In fact, if any professional came into the stream or saw this video, they would accuse me of being a rank amateur for trying to design and 3D model at the same time. Because you are splitting your brain between multiple things and basically being bad at all of them. You either have to be extremely experienced or very talented to be able to design and 3D model at the same time effectively. So, yeah, for anyone out there who ends up watching this in the future, do as I say and not as I do. Cannot recommend doing things this way. It's a bad idea. But I'm doing it anyway because I have sketched this type of design before. And the fact of the matter is that my drawing skills just aren't up to par with how my brain thinks in terms of 3D. So basically I'm saying that I don't want to. And I'm going to indulge myself in some less than ideal design and production practices. So, you know, bad me. All right. Right. Well, I'll deal with the transition between these two pieces later. For now, the important thing is to block out the core functionality of what I want this design to mechanically accomplish in terms of like how it's going to animate when it's done. Still trying to force myself to get used to the new keybind that they've had for a while, the shift key when you go to do extruding. I just haven't done that in forever. Okay, so this needs to be up here somewhere, and this needs to be in its neutral resting position. Okay, which is something like that. It's not quite perfect, but that'll do. Okay, so that means that the resting position of the hooks should be right about here, which means that the rail, okay, so we're gonna actually duplicate this, and we're gonna color this, that color, get the sides matched up with the rail. All right, we are going to, how do we want to do this? We need to scale this up, but I don't think scaling is going to quite do what we want. Okay, let's try this. So what we're going to do is we're going to match the horizontal axis first, freeze that there, and then slide this down to the rails height so you can match the horizontal or the vertical axis, and freeze that. And now what we can do is, since we know we've got the point of contact in the right place, we can start matching vertices. And for this one, we're going to have to chop that off because we don't want it to hook. In fact, we probably want to cut that back to about here to ensure that we don't, in fact, restrain the hooks from sliding back and forth. We just want this to be the backstop. Oh, right. Hang on a second. Can't do two at once, I don't think. Gotta do one at a time. There we go. Okay. And then now that we did the upper, we can go down here and do the lower. Probably have to do these one at a time, though. Okay, there we go. The other thing we can do is we can widen these a little bit. There we go. We want to get a little overlap there on the sides of the hooks. That way it gives it like a proper feeling of overlap. All right, cool. Next thing we can do, we can shorten this to match the stop. And now what we have is we have a rail system that will grab the bowstring and pull it back into position over here. Now, that's all nice and theoretical and stuff, but we should probably come up with some type of mechanical mechanism that would actually accomplish this. I'm very much a fan of practical science fiction and fantasy as much as possible. Nothing wrong with, fantasy that, is not completely realistic, but I dislike fantasy that the only justification for things is because magic. Feels very unsatisfying in general.
Shall I dispatch the welcoming drones?
Okay. So. Okay, so what we would want is the hooks would either need to be forced back along a gear rail. Yeah, that would be the only way that would make sense. So realistically, what you would want is you'd have a gear at the front.
You're being followed.
Okay. So you'd have a gear at the front that would spin. And that spinning gear would notch onto a rail. And as this spins, it would catch the teeth on the rail and push this all the way back to here. Which means that you do need either multiple gears, where the rail is only half the size, or you have an extended rail that when this shoots forward, the gear rail extends out past the front of the crossbow, which would be fine, theoretically. Hell, if you made the... Ooh, interesting. You know what we could do is we could actually attach that rail to the forward handle. And as a fast reload, you could actually slam the crossbow onto the ground. That would actually work. Huh. That could be fun. Might look a little silly, though. But it would be very practical. I think we want to try to avoid that as much as possible, because what would happen is you get into a situation where if the rail isn't possible to extend out beyond the silhouette of the crossbow, you wouldn't be able to fire it at point blank range. Which, I mean, if you're in point blank range with a crossbow, you're probably in trouble anyway, and should be using something other than a crossbow to defend yourself. But still, yeah, you either have to have the gear at the back, but then the rail extends too far backwards. Let's grab another cube here to represent it. We're gonna have to pick our poison with this design. You either need either need a rail that goes this way to here, but then it sticks out protruding backwards, which isn't ideal, or the more feasible way of doing it is the rail goes this way and slides back to here. There might be a way to kind of do a bit of a compromise. Bet you could start the rail back here to make it flush with the beginning of the stock. That should be okay. And then that way, when it slams forward to here, the rail can start a little further back, which means the initial gear point can be here, which means that the rail would need to be this long, roughly speaking. So it would slam forward. Be about here. That's not too bad. We could probably actually work with that if we extend the handle out. Like so. Okay, it's not too bad. It's a little disproportionate. Probably have to do something with the crossbow arms to make it feel like it's a little bit more balanced in terms of proportioning. But overall, that's it's not bad. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Might even be able to make this smaller if we theoretically we could probably add another one of these. happen if we added one there? Oh, I think we found ourselves an answer. Okay, cool. So basically what we're going to do is we are going to place two gears that are doing the same thing. And basically from the fired position, this is going to turn the gear, pull the rail. The second gear will pick up right here as a handoff and pull it the rest of the way back. And now we've shortened the rail. And we no longer need handles that are massive. We can get away with a more balanced proportion for the front of the crossbow. There we go. And there we have it. Cool. So basically now we have two gear points. So we need to model the gear teeth into the rail. We need to model the gears themselves, and then we need to effectively put another gear on the pump handle. Or, I mean, we could also, well, I don't think we want to do that. Well, I don't know, we could. We can, theoretically, we can just put another rail down here. On the handle itself, like so. How would we do this? So basically, we'd have another gear for this. Basically have a teeth rail, so it would be pulled back, so it's passing along the first one to about here, and then we'd have a handoff over here, which would continue to pull back till here. That might work. Might not either. I'm try to shorten this so that when it gets to here, it's not really impeding anything. Okay, so that can work there. And it's the handoff that's the problem now. So now we're getting down to the really like nitty gritty bits of designing something like this. Yeah, and for anyone who's wondering, no, I don't know gearing ratios and actual mechanical design because that's not my area of expertise. But I do know just enough to create ridiculous, unrealistic machines that would never work in real life. So, you know, I've got that going on. Hang on a second. No, it's not going to work. Come on. I'm sure I'm offering truly thrilling commentary. But what can I say? Really focused on trying to figure this out. Alright. So, here's where my make-believe fantasy of making, you know, cogs and gears comes crashing into conflict with reality. Matching gear ratios. I know that there is a set of mathematics that lets you figure this out, but I do not know what it is, nor do I feel like I'm particularly motivated to find out. If I was building a physical machine, that would be a very different story. But since I'm not, can't really claim to care all that much. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to mess around with the subdivisions of this cylinder until I get a ratio that looks like it might match. Closer. Let's try 48. Nope, 49. Maybe. Still seems like it's a bit short. Let's try 54. Nope. Need something smaller. 62. Oh, closer. Yeah, that should be good enough. Man, that is a chunky boy, though. This is going to be a lot of geometry. The good news is I only need to really make one of these. All right. All right, cool. So that is definitely not a realistic gearing ratio at all whatsoever. However, it is close enough to the real thing that for our pseudoscience sci-fi, it should be quite sufficient for what we're trying to accomplish. So we're just gonna grab this and accept that this will be what we're using and move on with our lives. Because there's really no point in thinking about it any deeper than this. Well, I'm going to take a quick break and might be back. So, see you guys in a